Welcome back to Creation Revealed. It's your host, Belissa.
And Melissa. So today's topic is degree secured, what now?
Oftentimes, right, we finish our degree. No one prepares us for what's going to happen right after. To be fair, I wish that I could have had lessons from someone that had already gone through it about what it's like, what I should watch out for, and simply just a few lessons about it.
About graduating, what to expect, what to look out for. What am I supposed to do with this paper that I've worked 4 years for and I'm just thrown into the world?
Is the world really my oyster?
Yes. You hear it in convocation ceremonies, but what does that look like? And that's what we're going to talk about today.
I think to start off with, I've been a year since I've graduated, and there's a few lessons I've learned, one of them being your circle. I think, when you're in university, you have so many people around you. You see them all the time during classes, but as soon as you graduate, your circle just becomes smaller and smaller. At least that's what it was for me. And I quickly came to realize that I needed to be mindful of who was in my circle, because your circle really determines who you can be in the next few years. I believe as humans, we're very malleable and we adapt easily to environments and the people around us. And so I found oftentimes that I could easily adapt depending on who was around me. And so that's why I think having my circle, being able to pour into me, having my circle have the same values, the same desires that I would want for myself. Shared goals, and who we'd want to be in the next 2, 3, 5 years was super, super important for the trajectory of my post-grad.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think, we hear the famous quote, which is by Jim Rohn, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that is so true. And I feel like when I first heard that, and I know it goes around a lot, I know everyone probably knows that quote, but at first it sounded profound, right? Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so true, da-da-da. But it's once I realized it's riddled everywhere, even in nature. Who you are around is going to affect who your output, essentially. So, for example, if you see an aggressive cub, it's probably because they belong to an aggressive pride. So it's just that thing of you are going to adapt and become those people that you surround yourself with. And instead of trying to, I guess, make it work in your outside of your benefit, you can biohack it to make it work for your benefit. So if you have goals that you want to achieve, or if you have things that you want to set out, especially after post-grad, it's, I guess, a matter of just getting around people that you have those similar goals with and similar values even.
Yeah. I think oftentimes, I know from my experience, when I started uni, for instance, right, there was a lot of IB students that started at UFT with me. And I went to a normal public school or whatnot, but they knew so much more than I did. Hung out with them quite a bit. There's a good sense of competition that makes you as a human want to adapt to that same competition level. Yeah. So being around those people, I actually became more smarter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you want to be more positive, if you're a creative, go find creative people to hang around with. You will become a better creator. If you want to be, an amazing musician, go find musicians that are going to make you better, right? If you want to go to med school, find other pre-meds that want to also go to med school, because they're going to be your influence, right? And it works in the direct opposite, right? If you're hanging out with very negative people,
you're probably going to be around negative people.
Super negative.
And so even just right after undergrad, if you have, maybe you don't know exactly what you want to do necessarily, but if you even have just an inclination of where you want to go, I know what really helped me is just knowing that, okay, these are my goals, then maybe I should get around people that have either already achieved them or that are looking towards that same goal. So I really like how you mentioned, for example, the biggest one that always pops up in my head is just on the road to medicine. If it's long and it's really it gets tough, you know what I mean? And not everyone is on that journey. But if you're around people that are on that journey, then it's going to make it a lot easier to just focus in on, because it's like that's your social circle.
Yeah.
That's who you're hanging around with. And those are the habits you're going to adapt. And it literally works in every single case.
Yeah.
And
I would even say, like, honestly, so for the person that's watching, right, and they're like, you know what, I'm in a small town, or maybe I'm just in whatever town I see myself, but there's no one that I aspire to be around me, or there's not people around me that I want to become like or want to hang around with. I don't see that in my visible immediate circle or immediate proximity. So what would what could you say to those people? Like, what could they seek out instead of like
that's so good.
a circle, you know?
Yeah.
Because not everyone has
that. Yeah.
Similar people around them, you know?
That's very true. And I think it's literally the great thing about where we are right now in the world is that we're in the age of technology, right? So you could literally just hop on your computer. I know for me, even just during school, if I didn't know anything, I hop on my computer and I get a well of knowledge from people that are doing the exact thing that I'm searching for. So it's like that's the huge benefit of how we are in society, like where we are right now, is that like 10, 20 years back, you would need somebody in your immediate circle. But now you can hop online, find whatever you need, and you've got it.
I guess this brings into question the topic of mentorship, right? I found that during my undergrad, I did not understand this at all.
It wasn't talked about.
It wasn't at all. I used to think of mentorship as, you know, people that do apprenticeships, you know.
Yeah, like blacksmiths and like mechanics, the kind of mentors that you need to do, like trade school, where you need to have a mentor in order to do the skill that you needed to perform.
Exactly. But once I graduated, I realized that mentorship is somewhat of a cheat code to where you want to go. If you can find a mentor, if you can find someone that is where you want to be in the next few years, it's a cheat code, because they essentially blockade you from making certain mistakes that they made. And so you don't need to make those same mistakes, and you can carry on your own like individual and unique journey, accelerate it almost.
Yes, so, mentorship. Mentorship is
I found that huge.
It was huge. And I feel like we started talking about mentorship a lot, I feel like, in the past 2 years. I feel like it's just like we started and then we haven't stopped since then. I don't know that I didn't know about mentorship and the importance of it during undergrad, or like, was that just because we weren't hip to it, we didn't understand, or is that a new thing in pop culture or just in culture in general? Because now that we talk about it, I see it everywhere.
Really?
I see it everywhere. Yes, it's in YouTube, it's in TikToks. It's like, oh, like mentors, this and that. Okay. I don't know. Maybe it's just my algorithm, of course. But I think it's a lot bigger of a topic than it was a couple years back.
I will say that mentorship, in its totality, I think it's been a thing since the start of time. Like when you think of like how stories are passed on generation after generation, right? Folklores are passed on. That's through mentorship. That's through a father teaching their son, a mother teaching their daughter. That's a form of mentorship. But I think in our society, we've changed from a society of being very like community-based to very individualistic, right? Whereby it's my family and we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure this out, but we don't need to tell the next neighbor. Whereas before, when people lived in a more communal space, what we knew is what you knew. So I think mentorship is not taken as such a key, valuable element of growth and of, you know, going into your next phase, because our society has changed from a communal community into like more individualistic society. So, which is not great, but I think that's why, essentially.
Yeah, I do see it, but I see it also in other cultures. You're completely right. Years back, it was a thing that everyone did and participated in, but more so because that was the way like civilization would grow and essentially move forward. There was incentive for it, whereas now there's not so much incentive because it's like, okay, say if you teach the neighbor to, I guess, like this is going way back to like how to hunt and these sort of things, then they're going to essentially bring in more for the community to share. So there's incentive there. But so I guess now when we're talking about like mentorship, like, 2024, what's the incentive for, so for example, if you're straight out of undergrad, what's the incentive for a mentor to be like, hey, let me bring you under my wing. Let me show you the path. Let me show you the way. Whereas I had to struggle and like, go through it myself to find, I'm going to let you know. For the person watching this, like, okay, like I get the importance of mentorship, but so now how do I go out and find one? And why would a mentor want to even mentor me?
Wow. Yeah, no, and that's such a valid question. What I'd say to that is incentive now for a mentor to seek out a mentee, or is it vice versa?
For a mentor to mentor a
A
mentee.
mentee, there we go.
That's a tongue twister.
For a mentor to mentor a mentee, I think it's out of the goodness of their heart, truly. I don't think there has to be an incentive. What I think is that if you're a good person, you would want to pass on something that you found very valuable, something that made you who you are and as successful as you are to someone else. And that's just straight out of the goodness of your heart. I also believe that mentors are not just out here trying to mentor anyone, I do believe that mentors seek out certain mentees. And so that also goes to say that you have to carry certain principles and certain, you have to carry yourself a certain way for even a mentor to be like, I see something in you, and they've got to see something in you. They've got to see some form of potential in you. They might even see their younger self in you, but that's through cultivating yourself daily, right?
Definitely.
So incentive, I don't think there is much incentive for a mentor. It's out of the goodness of their heart, and it's actually just that natural ability to just, I want to pass on what's worked for me to a younger person, which I think is
Definitely
beautiful.
agree. I think we all, like you said, we do have that. Even for me, when we see our younger cousins and things, we just want to tell them what we know because
Exactly.
we had to go through it, and you don't have to go through it. I definitely think that there's just that in general, but I really like what you said because I think that you do have to position yourself in such a way that it's like you can be easily identified as someone that can be menteed. So I think one of the biggest things is like just showing the hunger for it.
Yeah.
Literally just being like, no, because you don't really want to be talking to like a blank wall, like, spewing out, years of knowledge, whereas the person isn't receiving anything, right? But if you're there, like positioning yourself, like I'm literally in a place where I'm genuinely, like you're straight out of undergrad, you have goals, you have ambition, you have maybe things you want to pursue, but you don't know how to get there, but you genuinely show like I'm disciplined maybe, and I'm this and this, but more than that, I'm literally just hungry to know. I'm hungry to learn. There's a certain like pull that kind of comes with that, and I think you'd be surprised how many people are willing to share knowledge.
Exactly.
That
You'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised.
There's quite a lot.
And there's there's a lot.
And you said something there. I think it also takes a lot of humbleness. You need to be a very humble individual to ask for someone to mentor you, because you don't know anything at that point. And you need someone to direct you.
Your knowledge is definitely limited. So mentorship is literally
a cheat code.
It's a cheat code. It literally bypasses you years. You don't like your situation, change it. Jim Rohn says it best. He says, if you don't like where you are, move. You are not a tree.
What does that mean to you, though, when you hear that?
It really means that, like, hey, if you're in a situation, you're in a position, point in life, and you're like, hey, like, you can recognize within yourself, maybe even just looking around. You don't like your situation. Maybe you're not happy at your job. Maybe you're not happy where you are. Maybe you're not doing what you want to do or love to do. Then move. Like there's nothing really making you really ever. Obviously, the older you get, you have more responsibilities. But if you don't like where you are or what you're doing, move.
Right.
Because you don't have to be, I guess when you look at a tree, they're like rooted, right? Their ability to move is harder. We're not rooted.
Exactly. And specifically because we're talking about, post-graduation, at the specific age range we're in, this is going to be the easiest time. Dad always tells me, like, this is going to be the easiest time that you're able to be so malleable with your decisions. Your decisions matter, absolutely, but the frequency to which you change your decision is so much more, there's so much more grace with it, depending on how old you are. The older you get, like you said, you do get more responsible and you have more responsibilities. So that saying of like, if you don't like it, change it, becomes a bit harder, although it still applies, but it becomes a bit harder. So I definitely subscribe to that thought. If you're not happy at your job, at your 9 to 5, and you're, have just graduated, that's fine. The experience that you have it for 3 months, great. It's on your resume. Now move. Change to something else. I like to always, actually, it's really funny. Mom was telling me the other day that, I have this trend, right? So ever since I graduated, since last year, right after graduation, I worked corporate. I was working in the bank. I didn't like it. It had nothing to do with my degree, but I wanted to try it out. I didn't like it.
You were also in Toronto, big city.
Exactly.
Seemingly more like appealing.
But I realized that was not where I needed to be in that moment in time, specifically because Toronto is extremely expensive, and there were certain limitations in terms of like flexibility. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to move back home. I'm going to quit my job. I'm just going to get another job because I can, right? And then after that, I spent like about 6 months at my other job. I got the experience that I needed. And it's about realizing when you have reached a certain expertise in any company, or you've had a certain amount of experience in any space, is it necessary for you to continue in that company? Is it necessary for you to continue in that space? Are you going to learn more by staying there for the next 6 months? Or would you gain a lot more experience literally quitting and going somewhere else? That's the question I had to come to terms with. And it's shown to be a lot more valuable to me. I've gained a lot more experience by understanding when something needs to change, when I need to change, and when I need to move on.
Definitely. I love that, especially because, like you said, with our age range right now, when we're just graduated, there is no, so I've said like, oh yeah, we're not rooted. Obviously, it's nice to be rooted. There's a certain comfortability.
Stable.
There's a comfortability that comes with being rooted because it offers stability, right? It makes you, a tree is stable essentially, right? But I guess the issue that is discovered with that, like you said with your position, yes, you were stable because you had an income, like you had a job. But if you realize that you don't like it, then what's the point in rooting yourself in something that that's not for you? You know what I mean? And I think that was a huge lesson that I had to learn also for after grad, because at the end of the day, it's now that you get to, I guess, root yourself, uproot yourself, and find out what it is that you actually are geared towards and what you actually love to do. And like you said, if you're in a company and say your learning potential has been exhausted, then it's absolutely okay to move on because at the end of the day, you have more to learn, and that's fine.
And people have grace for it. Your boss, your manager, they're not going to not give you your reference letter. Like, that's what I used to be scared of. If I only stay here for like 6 months, they won't give me a reference letter. No, if you were a good worker, they'll give you your reference letter. But guess what? They understand that this is not your capacity. Like, you can move on. And they really do understand that. It's just that they want to keep you. And so they would never let you know. But yeah, that's what I would say. If you don't like your situation, and I know we only talked about jobs, but really this could apply to anything in life. If you don't like where you live, move. Make plans to move. See what are the possibilities? Like, what do I need to do in order to move from Ottawa, Canada to, I don't know,
Australia,
Sydney.
Yes.
See what kind of like financial abilities are possible. See who you can connect with in that new place. And
Because you
move.
don't know what you don't know.
You don't
and
know.
what you haven't seen. And so I guess what the real big thing is that we are so young, or we are young, and that does come with a certain level of liberty to go and figure it out. And so, if you don't like your situation, change it. And the fact that you're not a tree, it literally just means like make sure that you utilize this time that you have to really find out everything that you need to, because there will come a time where you essentially can't do that.
It's harder.
Being rooted will be important, and it's not, there comes a certain time where it's not okay for you to, I guess, sort of just uproot yourself and, I guess, have the mind that you can move and you can change, because then that's not acting wisdom, you know what I mean? But so, yeah, especially post-grad, after your undergrad, think about those things, because I sure needed to.
Exactly. Authenticity was another key piece. There was a study done, in fact, and it was high self-monitoring individuals versus low self-monitoring individuals. Now, what that meant was the high self-monitoring individuals, they were also called social chameleons. And I think what you can take from that is, I'm sure you can kind of understand, they're very good in adapting to any situation that they're in. Mm-hmm. If you put them in any crowd, they'll adopt to that crowd's behavior. They have very, they're not socially inept whatsoever, and they can easily change their attitude, their behavior, who they are as a person according to who they're talking to. And it could be an opportunistic reason or not. That's just their natural proclivity. Then they looked at the low self-monitoring individuals, and these individuals don't care at all. They remain exactly who they are at all times. It doesn't matter if I'm talking to Relissa. It doesn't matter if I'm talking to my professor, mom, dad. Like, they remain exactly who they are. They remain true to who they are at all times, but to the extremes. So both were to the extremes. They studied individuals at both extremities. And so what they saw was the correlation was authenticity and its relation to like later success in life, right? And what was interesting was that the high self-monitoring individuals were not necessarily more successful than the low self-monitoring individuals, vice versa. It happened to be that the people that had a good median between those two were the most successful. But it was towards the high self-monitoring piece, high self-monitoring individuals that showed more success in life later on. So from that,
so interesting.
It got me thinking about the fact that authenticity is literally a requirement to true success. I guess I wonder why that is. If we were to break it down, I wonder why that is.
I think that's really interesting, because if you have someone that's truly authentic, and you're saying the truly authentic people, the high self-monitoring people, and the ones that were able to more easily adapt to their situations were seen as the more successful people later down the line, compared to those that were like the exact same person essentially in every social setting.
Situation. However, the extremities were kind of
and the median was the best essentially. Out of the three, the median. So if you had levels of both moved in favor of being more high monitoring.
Exactly.
I think that makes sense to me actually, because depending on where you are, for example, if I'm talking to you, how I talk to my professor, that doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. That's not going to be very beneficial towards me, because there's certain social aspects to any conversation or to any relationship, you know what I mean? And even just in the world that we live in, you can't really just I guess, be blind to the fact that you do have to adapt and, change in accordance to where you are. Even though
Discernment to where you are,
yeah, exactly.
right? And how you should act in those
Definitely.
situations.
So say, for example, I'm just leaving uni and I've only ever known the life of being a student. And so say, for example, sometimes I hand in my assignments late and I just go up to my professor and I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry, this, that, and the third. Can I have an extension, da, da, da. And then I go out into the real world and I go to my manager, yeah, don't have that report in for you. I'm so sorry about that, but I'll have it in, da, da, da. Well, the consequences of that is that you might be
Let go.
fired. Yeah, you might be let go. And so I guess that's literally just the thing of like, there is sometimes an over, especially I think right now, there's like an over, like there's emphasis on being authentic. And it's so true in the sense of you should be the most authentic to yourself when it comes to finding out what you want to do, for example, and what you like to do, because that's what's going to breed the most success in terms of like, if you really love art, but then you go and like have an office job or something like behind a desk, then that's not going to be, you're not going to have success in terms of like happiness and, even just fulfillment. But on the flip side of it, if you genuinely go and say that like, hey, I am not somebody that can hand things in on time or like, this, that, and the third, and so I'm going to put that into everything that I do, then that's obviously not going to breed a lot of success, down the line.
Absolutely. And I also think that within every person, within every individual, I believe, God has actually put a unique ability within all of us and something that naturally comes to us. Mm-hmm. For instance, I could be naturally gifted in math and science, whereas like perhaps yourself or someone else might need to do more work in order to either get the same grades as me or even a little bit lower. But the point is that I don't have to work as hard. If I'm a good creator, I just see visions for things before anyone sees it. I can catch it before anyone sees it. That's a natural skill. That's a natural gift I've been given within me to go ahead and see it. And that's what sets me apart from everyone in that industry. It goes with anything that you want to do. I think that what authenticity does, or by you being truly authentic to yourself daily, it allows you to grow closer and for you to understand what that natural ability is. Because if you're excellent at talking to people, for instance, if you're an excellent communicator, but you've been conditioned to believe that the only success you'll gain is through working in a corporate job from a 9 to 5, and that's your line of thinking.
That's your idea of success.
Your idea, or what it's been told to you, essentially. And so you don't allow yourself to have that freedom to come closer to what you're naturally good at, which is communicating to people. You'll never know that. And so there's that hidden gift within you that is never brought to light. And therefore, it's not that you're not successful in your job, it's just that you're not successful or the most successful person in what you truly are destined to be, which is a communicator to the masses. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. And that's true success, you being the best at what you have been naturally given, right? And you only know that if you're authentic to yourself, right?
You only even find it. You only even know what authenticity is if you're seeking that out. Like if you're seeking that out daily, trying to find out what is it that is in me, like you just said, that is where I'm at.
It's easy for
It's
you.
easy for me. It's like
people have to work hard for it, but it comes naturally.
And where that is, where you find that, that's how you become, like you said, excellent, successful, like the best of the best. And that's how you even become an outlier. because at that point, you're matching your efforts with what you have been naturally given, right?
Wow.
And so I think that one of the biggest things to be looking out for right now, and while you navigate what your
Post-grad.
post-grad, is like, hey, like, let me find out what does authenticity even mean to me.
I really resonated. Like, I really tried to hone in on that last part we were talking about, authenticity, whereby, I believe that although I've been a year after graduating, it's a thing where it's a constant learning process, trying to become that authentic version of
Truly
yourself.
authentic, yes.
I haven't reached the pinnacle point of my authenticity, but that's the goal. And I'm really excited that everyone listening was able to get something out of it. I hope they enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it, rather.
Yes.
And we
We
will
will
see
see you
you
next
next
time. It's
time.
been Creation Revealed. I'm your host, Relissa.
And Belissa.
See you next time.